Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Temple Institute Parsha class. My name is Gedalia Meyer, and I'm podcasting from Adumim in Israel. What is God? This is the classic of classical questions. Everybody wonders about this at some point or another in their lives, from atheists to hardcore believers. For the atheists, it is an inquiry into disbelief. They're asking themselves what exactly it is that they don't believe in. For the believers, it is possibly even more heretical to their nature. In a sense, by asking this question, they are doubting the belief that defines them as people. As dramatic as all that sounds, the truth is that both groups rarely ask this question. In fact, this question is pretty scarce even among the vast group that lies somewhere in between these two extremes. They should be asking this question, but all too often find themselves settling for leaving it unasked and unanswered. The question just gets filed away somewhere, perhaps to be taken up at some vague point in the future when more time and energy will be available. But as we all know, that rarely, if ever, actually happens. The question collects dust somewhere in the inner reaches of the mind. It is theology, and everybody knows that theology is boring and impossible to get anywhere with. Nothing really ever gets answered in theology. The same questions get tossed around for centuries, and no conclusions are ever drawn. There is no point in asking what cannot be answered. This is where this all-important question has been relegated to on the great pillar of human knowledge. More palpable questions like the nature of physical reality or the structure of the mind have usurped it as the questions at the very top. If people were given a choice of reading a book about the origins of the universe or one of contemporary theology, there is little question which would sell better. More popular than any of these would be real-life matters, such as sexual urges or drug addictions or wars. God is on almost everybody's back burner, if even there. This is all a reflection of the general trend towards atheism in much of the world. There is no question that this has been the case since around the beginning of the 20th century. Science began explaining everything without any need for an omnipotent deity, so God went the way of the vital essence of life. It's all atoms and DNA all the way down. Perhaps we still need God to light the initial firecracker to set the whole thing off in a bang, but after that, things just ran by themselves. But there is also little question that many people still feel a very deep need for some sense there is something more to it all than just particles and forces. We feel deep within ourselves that there is some inner meaning to our lives, and that there is no way that atoms and DNA can account for that. We can write this sense off as some relic of evolutionary biology, but that doesn't make the feeling go away. On the contrary, it seems to make it stronger as it penetrates through any veneer of materialism that we attempt to plaster over it. This inner need and drive invariably points back in the direction of God. If there really is meaning to our lives, what else could account for it other than a supernatural deity who imposes it upon us and is the source of it all? It sure would be nice if we could somehow manage to anchor our inner sense of meaning and purpose with a solid idea of what God actually is. While many will claim that they have such a conception from their religious background or whatever, there are many others who really have no idea. It is to those that this question is most relevant. They want to have some direction to turn their thoughts and aspirations. They want an answer to this question. It may come as a surprise to many that it is quite difficult to find an answer in the Bible. The Bible talks about God all over the place, but rarely actually attempts to describe God in any way. On top of that, to those who actually examine the text, whatever descriptions there are don't seem all that consistent. God is merciful, but gets angry all the time. God is the creator of everything, but also gets intricately involved in the personal lives of insignificant people. God is both the local deity of the Israelites and the universal deity of all of humanity. Is there any place in the text that somebody actually asks what God is and gets a straight answer? The best candidate might be right in this week's Parsha. It is called Shemot, the first Parsha in the second book of the Torah, also called by that name. The word Shemot means names, and it lists the 12 sons of Yaakov who would become the 12 tribes of Israel. The first chapter of the Parsha gets us right into the setting for the Exodus. Slavery and oppression being imposed upon the Israelites by the new Pharaoh, who saw them as an ever-growing threat to his hold on power in ancient Egypt. This oppression culminated with the general decree to cast all newborn male babies into the river to die. This leads us to the main person in the rest of the Torah, Moshe. He was one of those male babies, and his mother tried to hide him for a while. When this was no longer possible, she placed him on the water in a kind of basket to float away to whatever fate awaited him. His sister watched from a distance as the daughter of Pharaoh herself spotted the basket floating in the river as she went there to bathe. She had her maids fetch the basket, and they realized that it was one of the Hebrew babies, and for some reason decided to save it and bring it back to the royal household. Against all odds, Moshe survived and thrived in the royal household. He grew there into a man, and in some vague manner realized that he himself was a Hebrew. He went out to witness the oppression of his newly discovered people and attempted to do something about it. His intervention got him into trouble with the authorities, and he was forced to flee for his life. He ran away to the relatively distant area of Midian across the Sinai Peninsula and found a home with the clan of the local priest, Yitro. He married Yitro's daughter, Tzipporah, and took over responsibility for the shepherding of the sheep. This task was to lead him into his biblical destiny. One day, while shepherding the sheep in the wilderness, he encountered a sight that would go down in human history as one of the most momentous ever. It was the burning bush, and it was Moshe's first remarkable encounter with God. In the course of this rather long encounter, Moshe is informed of his role as the person who would take the Israelites out of Egypt with the Exodus and lead them to the Promised Land. As he is hearing all this in whatever prophetic form it took, he manages to ask a few questions about the plan and his role in it. He questions why he specifically was called to this task. He asks why the Israelites should accept any of this and go along with it. At the conclusion, he begs God to find somebody else to take up this burden because he was not a good speaker. God answers these questions and assures him through promises and threats that everything will work out. But there is a question in the middle that certainly is the most dramatic and has come down in history as the most famous. This question, which is the second one Moshe asks, deals with the name of God. Quote, "I shall come to the Israelites, and I will tell them that the God of your ancestors sent me to you. And they will say to me, 'What is God's name?' What shall I say to them?" They want to know what God's name is. God's response to this crucial question is, quote, "I will be what I will be. And you shall tell the Israelites that I will be sent me to you." Then God continued and said, "Thus you shall say to the Israelites, Hashem, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this is the way I am to be remembered for all generations." It is a bit confusing. First is this "I will be what I will be," followed by a shorter form of "I will be," and then the final name of Hashem, which seems to be the actual name of God. But if that is the case, why did God preface things with the "I will be what I will be" statement, which also seems to be an answer to Moshe's question? Which one is the real name of God? It should be mentioned at this point that a name has a certain amount of significance in Judaism in general, and specifically the names of God are treated as being of paramount importance. They are not just names, but express something of the essence of what God is. In other words, Moshe was asking how they were to understand God. This answer seems to reflect a dual nature of God. First is that "I will be what I will be," and then the more familiar name of Hashem. What is the connection between them? This is a very deep question that has been dealt with countless times over the long history of Judaism. Philosophical and mystical approaches have found profound ideas lurking in this strange answer. Almost everybody who has studied the Bible is intrigued by this and wonders what it means. It should be noted that this "I will be" name never appears again in the Bible. It shows up just this once and then vanishes from Judaism. This is rather strange. It seems so significant here and then is gone. What happened to it? Perhaps there is a simple answer to this question. This name is nothing more and nothing less than the very familiar idea that God is the source of all fate. God is what will be. Whatever else we might think about God, this notion that God determines what will happen over the course of history is firmly embedded in this name. It never comes up again because this very idea is encapsulated in the very familiar biblical divine name of Elohim. But that second name, Hashem, follows this first description and seems to supersede it. This is God's true name forever. The closest we can come to translating this word, which is the famous tetragrammaton, the four-letter name of God, which Jews refer to by the word Hashem, which means the name, is existence or being. This idea encompasses even the power of fate. It is the idea that God is the source of all reality in whatever form it takes. God is the source of all meaning in life and the guide of all that happens. God's independence from the fixed power of fate is what enables every human choice to take place and to have effect. God is existence, and thus, in a sense, is everything. From the Exodus taking form to the most trivial thoughts in the mind of a person 3,000 years later, God is within it all. This, perhaps, is the Bible's answer to the question of what is God? Shabbat Shalom.